Look at the biggest pain point in your life. Because if you don't have a dream big enough to want to change or a purpose, usually pain will teach you. So you're going through fight or flight all day. Your brain's in survival mode, worried about safety and security. It's almost impossible to think positive. But I found that there was a missing loop when it comes down to trauma and what happens with the body, the mind, and emotions. What I've learned is that
most of us don't realize why we feel so stuck. We just know that we are. We don't know if we're just being lazy, if we're just lacking motivation, or maybe it's biology. Well, in this episode, I sit down with author, podcaster, and coach Nate Ortiz, who specializes in helping regular, busy people get their nervous systems back online, not just with mindset, but with nutrition, boundaries, and simple daily practices that allow your purpose to land. During our conversation, you're going to learn why people, and often men, suppress pain until it becomes disease or dysfunction, what being in constant survival mode is actually doing to your body and your brain, how to find your purpose by solving your biggest pain point, and tools for protecting your energy, especially around your family. But we're going to begin with Nate's wild origin story because he was abandoned at birth, he was raised in chaos, and yet somehow, against all the odds, he becomes a Division I athlete, a published author, and a coach to icons like Lin-Manuel Miranda. Timestamps are in the description if you want to skip around. Let's dive in. Nate Ortiz, welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to have you on, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Light. Appreciate you. Before we get started, thank you for your blurb. You're a real one. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So you're referring to the book that you just had published called The You Never Knew. It came out March 2025. You and I share a literary agent, Colleen O'Shea. I've been working with her since 2016. That's when we first started working together. So we're going on 10 years. And I got a chance to dive into your book, and you have a fascinating story. I was telling you earlier that Colleen will suggest a lot of authors for this podcast, and most of them I pass on. But when I did a little deep dive into your story, I was like, no, we got to have Nate on to share his story because it's so compelling. You've been overcoming adversity your entire life, literally since the moment you left the womb. And so for the sake of the listeners getting context, tell us how you got introduced to the world. What were those circumstances like?
When my mother was pregnant with me, she actually, she was on drugs, right? She started getting into recreational drugs at a young age. But then when she was pregnant with me, she kind of advanced to the more dangerous drugs on the street. It was so bad that when she had me and I was born, I had too much heroin in my body. I had to stay in the hospital. I had to go to ICU for a couple months, and I had to go through therapy of detoxification and getting my nervous system to operate correctly. So one day they'll call my dad and my mom and let them know, like, this is not looking good. And then one day they'll tell them this is looking a little better. It went on for a couple months. And then when the phone call went out to come pick me up, my parents didn't pick up. There's so many stories about what happened that day. But to be real with you, what I've come to kind of like learn that's most consistent is that they didn't think I was going to make it. So they called the emergency contact, which was my mom's mom. My grandmother came and picked me up, and she gave me my mother's married name. So when my mom met my father, my mother was married, but they split. They didn't go to court and get the real divorce. So my mom's married last name is Ortiz. My father's black, my mother's white. So when my grandmother named me Ortiz, it kind of threw a lot more, insecurities as I was growing up due to the fact that I'm biracial. I grew up in the projects in Jersey City, New Jersey, called Holland Gardens Projects. And most of my cousins was white and Puerto Rican, but I was the first black kid in my family. And my real last name, my father's last name was Turner. So I grew up, my last name is Ortiz, and I didn't have a home. I was going from my grandmother's house to my aunt's house to my cousin's house. And then I was going back and forth from my grandmother's house to my grandmother's house. My mom went to prison when I basically was growing up around like 2 to 3 years old. She, committed a crime. She went to prison. My dad's a drug dealer. So I grew up kind of confused and trying to figure this thing out. And by the time I was about 8 years old, my mom's, she got out of prison and she got Section 8 because she went through a program. So we got welfare, we got Section 8, and we moved in with my mother, my older brother and sister, which my mother had 2 kids from her ex-husband. We moved in with them. So me and my little brother, which my father had me and my younger brother with my mother. So we have an older brother and sister who are Puerto Rican and white, and me, Brandon, who's my middle brother, and then my youngest brother, Darren. But my mother had Darren when she was in prison, so Darren couldn't move with us. So Darren went with my mother's sister. I know it's a lot of stuff, but we can dive a little more into one of these subjects. But then, yeah, I moved in with my mother when I was about 8 years old. I didn't even know who she kind of, I was a little confused of like knowing her. I didn't really know my mom. And when I moved in with my mother, I started to see shifts in her behavior. Like a regular beating wasn't a regular beating. There was bats being used. Sometimes she hates that I say this, but she chased me with a knife a couple times. But then she started dating this guy named Crime within like 2 to 3 weeks of me just moving in with her. There was this big dude named Crime. He moved in with us. And this dude, first day, he comes in, makes us sit down. And he's like, look, I'm going to put the rules on you guys. I'm going to tell you how this household is going to be run. From now on, y'all going to call me dad. I said, Dad, I'm not calling you dad, bro. Like my father, what's wrong with you? I got a father. So the reason why I responded like that is even though my dad is a drug dealer, my dad was a father. He sacrificed his life for me and my younger brothers. Mm-hmm. And my dad raised me to be the man that I am today. And my dad has zero tolerance on the street, where I kind of thought maybe this guy doesn't know who my dad is because he'll never even try to, start a conversation like that with me. And I said, I got a father. And this dude picked me up, put me on a wall, and gave me a body shot right to the ribs. I was so blown away. He was a big, strong dude, about 6 foot, probably 220. He had a Lakers jersey on that day, a Lakers jersey, Shaquille O'Neal Lakers jersey. I remember the day like it was yesterday. Drops me, my older brother went to go give him body shots. He's like 11, starts beating him up. I jump on him. This dude tore us up, man. He beat us bad, so we sat back on the couch. Me and my brother are bleeding, out of breath. And I was a little bit in shock. Number one, I just had a man that doesn't know who I am beat on me. Number two, my mother didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. Number three, I have to figure out how to call my father or tell my father. So as he sits us down, I told him, I said, yo, bro, like wait till my father finds out about this. And the first thing he told me and my brothers, he's like, if anybody tells anybody what goes on in his household, I'm gonna kill your mother. And then I'm gonna take out your sister, and then I'm taking you guys out. And come to find out that he kind of had an attempted situation where he almost took out his ex-wife. That's why he went to prison. And when he came out, him and my mom got together. So from that day on, it was crazy. I saw my mom, as we continue to go, I saw my mom go through a lot of issues with drug addiction, which I didn't know until one day I looked through a doorknob that was no longer there because she wasn't answering the door. Me and my brother would go days without eating. My mother, she was too much busy being on the street. And, me and my younger brother stood together because my older brother and my older sister, they will stick together. But family kind of broke apart when my sister killed my niece when I was 11. So as soon as we left that situation where we were when we first moved with my mom, the dude that beat me kicked me out the house, went to my father. I didn't want to tell my dad he was beating me. This dude used to make me hold his hand to school. He was just kind of something that I never experienced a situation like that before. He wanted to be a father so bad, but it was like he was like abusing us to try to be like his children. And we moved back in with my dad for a little bit. My dad was a drug dealer. He had a warrant for his arrest. So when I was with my dad, we was running away from cops all day, or we were hiding out from cops, so my mom, we'll have like a 2000. Yeah. I'm trying to see how far you want me to go with this, but we had a 2000 or 2001, anywhere from like a 1998 to a 2001 Ford Taurus following me from school because they know that I was going to meet up with my dad. So we used to have these little codes on the phone to be able to meet up so my dad can drop off $20 or $30 for me and Brandon. But yeah, we moved out of my mom's house at that situation because the dude kicked us out, brought me to my dad's house, and told my dad that we were being some thugs. Well, my dad didn't have really nowhere to live, so he was going house to house for like roommates. So then we stood with him for a little bit. Then my mom and that dude broke up. We moved back with my mom when she moved to Jersey City Heights. And when we went there, that's the first time I saw my mom getting high. When I looked through that doorknob, when I was knocking on her door one day, she wasn't answering the door. So the doorknob was broke. So I'm like, yo, Ma, I'm banging on the door, and I look through the little doorknob, and I saw my mom shooting heroin. And my little brother wanted to go check, and I grabbed him, and I was like, no, don't look at that. He wanted to know what it was. And I was like, oh no, she's drinking alcohol or whatever. That kind of started making sense for me. That was when I was like around 10 going on 11. And then that's when my sister went to prison for the murder of my niece. So we had a 6-month-old niece that struggled with epilepsy. And we had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-month-year-old. The 3 and 2-year-old were healthy. The 6-month-year-old had epilepsy. And then one night, my sister and her boyfriend, they had a plan because they didn't want to deal with it. I never saw my nephews again after that day. And I raised those kids. I spent every day after school with them. And that's when things got really bad. My mom really lost it after that. So it got to the point where we were homeless. So I had to raise my 2 little brothers at a very young age. And we lived we moved in with my father in a hotel right in front of the Holland Tunnel in Jersey City, New Jersey. So that's like a quick, fast story of that's like 5% of my childhood.
So you write in your book about the idea of purpose and the importance of having a purpose. And you said that you witnessed your mom actually got cleaned up when she became a grandmother because now she had a purpose. And obviously that changed when your sister or when her daughter killed the kid or got accused of killing the kid.
Yeah, she got found guilty. Yeah, she went to prison.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the idea of purpose, right? If somebody's kind of out there listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, well, that your life sounds like this is very challenging. How do you find purpose within that?
Absolutely. In chapter 6, the you never knew in the book, I talk about the importance of purpose, of pursuing a purpose when it comes to healing from trauma and trying to overcome chronic stress. Because it's very easy to subconsciously repeat patterns that you shouldn't be doing, but you're doing. My mom, when she became a grandmother, she actually had a purpose at that particular time. She started to become like a grandmother. She'll get up in the morning. She'll watch the kids. She was not spending that food stamps money when it came in on a second. She wasn't cashing out for it for drugs. She was actually buying groceries for the house. And I saw a different version of my mom for that little bit of time. It was about 2 to 3 years. And then when my sister went to prison, we lost everything. When we lost my family, my mom, she lost her purpose and she got right back into those bad habits. But that was the moment that I found my purpose, because I got tired of going through, getting beat from a stepfather to not knowing where I was going to sleep. And then we came home. And when my mom lost it, after we lost our family, about a couple of weeks after that, I went home and it was no hot water, no electricity. My mom didn't even pay like the $30 bill that, usually welfare helps you pay a good amount of it. My mom didn't even pay that. And I got tired of it, man. I sat down and I was like, I have 2 options. Either I'm going to go on the street and I'm going to start hustling with my friends, or I'm going to figure out what my purpose is. I'm going to pursue something that seems impossible. And when you're trying to find your purpose, usually you'll find, there's a quote that I heard from Joseph Campbell that kind of like concludes it so well. It's like the cave that you fear of entering holds the treasure that you seek. Right? Like there's a lot of things that what I found of going through all of my pain, instead of like avoiding it, I found and I sat down and I said to myself, what's one way I can overcome this? What's one way I can escape Jersey City? You start off small, right? Look at the biggest pain point in your life, because if you don't have a dream big enough to want to change or a purpose, usually pain will teach you. So usually that's one of the 2 things that you'll find in life. So I found that pain was my first response to finding my purpose. I was tired of literally not having food and being cold and not having hot water and not sure where I was going to sleep. So the first thing that I did is I sat down and I just started small. How can I escape Jersey City? And then the first thing that came up that kind of got my attention was we had the #1 basketball school in the country, coached by Hall of Fame coach Bob Hurley at St. Anthony's. So the first thing when someone's trying to find their purpose, the first thing that's going to come up when you start writing down your ideas is how am I going to be able to do this? And how is usually going to be the first thing that's going to kind of rob you from your imagination, rob you from the possibility of making your dreams come true. So that's kind of, how can I play for Bob Hurley, bro? I'm not 6'5", I'm not 6'7". This was when I was like 5'7". I'm now 6'3". I became like 6'3", 6'4", eventually, but you stress about the how. The first thing I said is it's possible. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to write that down. Now, when I had the idea of what I wanted to do, the first thing I did was, what's the first simple thing that I can do today that's in my control to get one step closer? And the first thing that came up to my mind, I had a man named Mr. Fernandez. He was the counselor of the school. This guy used to chase me around school saying, Nate, you have to talk to me. This is a trauma you went through. You're going through a lot at home. If you don't talk to me, it's going to affect you when you get older. I'm like, bro, I'm not talking to you. I don't want to talk to no therapist. Cause you're too cool to talk to a therapist. Right. And then the first thing that came to my mind was like, that's the guy. He's going to get me the first step done, because if I want to go play for the number one school in the country, which I feel like my purpose is to overcome all of this trauma that I'm going through, to inspire my little brothers so they can have somebody to look up to and we can break the generational trauma that we're going through. I went to school the next day. Mr. Fernandez said, Nate, you have to come talk to me. I said, you were right. I do have to come talk to you on under one condition. He said, what is that? I said, every morning at 6 a.m, you're going to come here. You're going to open up this gym and you're going to catch my rebounds. He said, catch your rebounds for what? I said, well, I want to play for Bob Hurley at St. Anthony's. He said, Bobby? You want to play for Bobby? I said, you know who he is? He goes, of course I know who Bob Hurley is. He said, okay, I'll make you the deal, but you have to tell me everything. Everything. I said, fine, tell me everything. I'll tell you everything. He goes, but the day that you miss, when you miss that day, then you have to come every day after school. And I was like, oh, damn, I'm not sure if I want to do that deal, bro. Like after school, I'm like, yo, he's bugging. But then I was like, you know what? I'll make you that deal. When I went in and he'll start catching my rebounds, that was the first step, practicing the craft, right? I had this dream, this purpose of like, yo, I'm going to make it out. If I go to St. Anthony's, nobody from the particular neighborhood, the part of Jersey City I was from, went to St. Anthony's. Bob Hurley has 100% college acceptance rate with his basketball players. So I'm like, yo, I'm going to be a part of that. I'm going to college. I'm getting out of here. And at that, when I was doing the shooting with Mr. Fernandez, he taught me one thing. He taught me that the way I dealt with my pain, he taught me how to deal with the pain, because I had anger, but I will never show it. My little brother, he'll show it. He'll get mad. He'll argue with somebody. He just pops a kid just for talking crazy. Me, I'm a little more patient. He said to me, he taught me how to alchemize my pain into, and when you're angry or you're frustrated, that's energy, right? You can alchemize that energy into action toward your purpose in life. So what he taught me was, all the anger and frustration I was going through, now shoot 100 more jump shots, because that's how angry you are. But what do you take the imagination, your self-image of who you're going to become. He used to put up newspapers of kids getting scholarships to St. Anthony's to play for Bob Hurley, and used to say, that's you. Imagine that's you. Read the name. That's Nate Ortiz, not Mike Rosario or Dominic Cheek, which were two players. And then he'll have me go shoot. If I was tired, if I didn't feel like it, if I was unmotivated, he would tap in by getting me angry. So he would literally say things about crime, the dude that used to beat me. He used to bring it up. Remember crime used to beat you, Nate? Remember crime? And I'm like, yo, what is he doing right now? But he was making me angry to alchemize that anger into passion, or alchemize that anger into taking action towards my dream. So the first step I would 100% say is get clear of what you want. Get clear of where you want to go. Get clear of what your purpose is. The second thing is be careful of the how monster. I call it the how monster. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? The next thing is your brain will automatically assume that there's somebody out there that's doing what you want to do, or the people that you want to attract or work with or inspire, somebody else is already doing that job. And what I've come to learn is that it's your story, your swag, the way you approach things that makes you different, that why people want you, even though the other person has bigger followers, or that one company already has someone who went to a bigger school. They want you for a particular reason of who you are. And I never missed a day of school, Mr. Fernandez. 3 years in a row, I got a full scholarship to St. Anthony's. When you find your purpose and you start seeing things go on, you're going to get tested. And here's the next step. You're going to have to learn how to protect your energy. Meaning, when you wake up and you're doing the things that you don't feel like doing, it takes time, it takes energy. What you'll start noticing is other people around you or situations will start to try to pull you back into your old habits. And a lot of times we can get a little scared to say no. But what I've learned is your yes isn't good enough until you learn how to say no. And most of us don't know what to say no to because we don't have a purpose. And when we do get a purpose and you get core values, what do you need? I know what I need. I need a cup of coffee that's fresh in the morning, an hour to myself. I need to be able to listen to music that be able to, help me get my image together, get my mind right. I need to be able to get good sleep. I need to have proper nutrition. I need to train. And as soon as something goes against that, yo, Nate, you want to come to the club tonight, 11:30? And I know I got to get up at, early in the morning and work with a client. No, I can't. Right? Your yes isn't good enough. You to learn how to say no. And when you're pursuing your purpose and someone doesn't respect you, no, congratulations. Because now you're starting to see who deserves a dream team jersey. A dream team is those that respect your yes and respect your core values and support your purpose in life. Get a dream team jersey. They get your time, energy, and your ideas when you have time, energy, and ideas. Those that don't respect your no, don't get a dream team jersey. Now you're going to find people that you really love or you really, you were close to that you want to be able to give a dream team jersey to, but you find that they don't respect your no and they don't believe in your purpose and your dream. And what you come to find is that they don't make the team. It's hard to deal with those individuals. One thing that I've learned to do is I created something called the stopwatch method, where if you're going to go to an event, right? Because we all have to go to events or be around family that you want to be around, or that's not on your dream team, that doesn't support your core values and your purpose. If you're going to go to an event and you have that party, you have to, that Thanksgiving party or that job event or whatever it may be, you have to put that on a stopwatch. Sometimes we can just show up and be like, all right, I don't feel like being here. I'm going to be here for a couple hours. And then you're going to let people just ask you so many questions. And then you're going to just go through the motion. No, if that event starts at 7 and ends at 1, you got to decide, I'm going to pull up. I'm going at 8 p.m. and I'm out at 9. When I go there, whoever wants to be negative, like my cousins, I have a lot of cousins. When I go, they're like, oh, Mr. Hollywood's here. Oh, if you don't have alkaline water, he won't drink it. They make these comments. It doesn't bother me because when I go, I'm like, yo, I got 1 hour. I'm giving you 1 hour of my time. And if this is how you want to use your time with me, that's on you. And what people start to notice is when you do respect that time limit and you do leave at that particular time, when you leave, people will start to come aware that they didn't actually have a conversation with you and they don't know what's really going on and they didn't really make that connection, where their actions start to change a little bit. That's what I've seen. A lot of my clients have seen as well. And what do you do with that extra time? When you go back, you work on your purpose, you work on your craft. And when you come back around and you don't respond to the negativity or those that are not on your dream team, they low key, when you start making your purpose come true, they low key pull you to the side and be like, hey, I have a quick question for you. How'd you lose 15 pounds? Hey, I have a quick question. How'd you make those videos, or how do you post on social, whatever it may be? They'll ask you when nobody else is looking, but they're giving in a little bit to their ego. You feel me? And eventually they become bench players. So they're not on the dream team. They're not a starter on the dream team. You're 50-50. They got a jersey, but they still have to prove their way to be a starter. So those are a couple steps. We could dive deeper into any of those things you want, but I want to give a full scope of trying to give some type of aspect of making your purpose come true.
No, I love that, man. When I read the stopwatch method, it reminded me of a thing that I recently put out, which is this idea that there's no such thing as toxic relationships. You just have toxic dynamics where you stay around someone's energy for too long and then it becomes toxic. But if you observe, hey, I'm good with this person for like 5-10 minutes. And then if I go beyond that, then it starts to become, toxic. Then I know that I have an expiration time of 10 minutes. And so if I start to get into the other side of that, that's on me because I didn't honor my expiration time. And that's what the stopwatch method reminded me of. You also wrote about how survival mode can neutralize the motivation or the inspiration to want to be on a purpose and take a leap of faith and bet on yourself and all of those things. And you go really deep into the biochemistry of stress and how that affects the body. So I think it's worth it to cover that because a lot of people may hear this and go, I mean, I want to have a purpose, but I need to pay my bills. They start creating all these reasons why they have to play it safe, why they have to stay in a situation like, your mom stayed with that guy crime. And I think so many other people have a variation of that happening in their life. And we don't realize when we talk about status quo, right, which is how things are, we may be telling ourselves a story about how we are stuck in the status quo. And if someone like you or me suggests, hey, but wait a minute, you can go and shoot, you can practice every morning for 3 years. No, I can't because I have to wake up. I work at night and they start going into the story and doubling and tripling down on the story. But I think a lot of that is tied to the stress of whatever else they may be navigating. So let's unpack that a little bit so that people can feel like it's not personal, and you just have to be a little bit more diligent knowing that that's happening in the background.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know we went straight into the story, but for those that don't know, I ended up going to college. I went to St. Anthony's on a full scholarship. I went to college on a full scholarship, and I got a movement science degree. So I went and studied nutrition, physical therapy, strength and conditioning. And then when I graduated, I got a license in nutrition. I went to the Czech Institute, got 3 licenses with them. And then I went to a bunch of other institutes and got some licenses. So what I've found is when I studied the anatomy, physiology, and the psychology of the body, because I went to school for those reasons. I'm like, yo, I'm screwed up. Every time I went to the doctor, they're like, you got ADHD. I have rheumatoid arthritis. I have celiac disease. I'm like, bro, every time I come here, y'all telling me I got another autoimmune disease. But I found that there was a missing loop when it comes down to trauma and what happens with the body, the mind, and emotions. What I've learned is that it's so obvious that cortisol and adrenaline are the 2 hormones that are usually represented a lot in the research studies and are usually brought up in therapy and from psychologists. But there's a 3rd hormone that I found that plays a major role. And that hormone happens to be insulin. And I'm going to be breaking down on why that's important. Before I do, when the body gets under stress, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, the HPA axis, tells the adrenal cortex to release cortisol. And that hormone being released into the blood stems up the nervous system, where you have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is the fight or flight. The parasympathetic is the rest and digest. When we get stressed, our sympathetic nervous system gets triggered and we get ready to fight or flight. And we go through something called the 5 layers of energy, which trauma is stored, that I talk about in chapter 2. The nervous system is the first layer of energy. The second layer is your organs and glands. The 3rd is the muscles. The 4th is emotions, energy emotions. The 5th is subconscious. Trauma goes through all first 4 layers faster than regular stress does. Repeated stress becomes subconscious at number 5, but trauma goes through the first 4 layers and becomes subconscious right away. So what happens is that when you're on your mission, on your purpose, and you find yourself stuck or feeling like you can't accomplish the things you want to accomplish, if your cortisol levels are high, or if you're under stress, your brain communicates with the reptilian part of the brain. So you have the reptilian brain, the emotional brain, which is the limbic brain, and then the neocortex, which is the intellectual. That's your dreaming. That's what you want to create. When the body has high levels of cortisol, the body shuts all that down from being intellectual and even emotional. It's in survival mode, meaning it's looking for safety and security. And safety and security today is like, I need a guaranteed, like, I want to find my purpose in life, bro, but I need a guaranteed plan. Or I want to make sure, like, when I get a job, I got guaranteed insurance. It's hard to take risk with that because of that particular survival mode. When we're young, it benefits us when we come out of trying to get out of trauma. And I can speak from, it benefited me. When you have high levels of adrenaline and cortisol, you don't get tired. You got to go grind. So when we're young, we go through situations where we're going through fight or flight, and it's benefiting us because the body has to, when the cortisol levels are high, your body's stemmed up in sympathetic nervous system to fight something or run away as fast as you can. So we're using that adrenaline, which is numbing how we feel, numbing how tired we are, numbing how sore we may be, to be able to go to class. And then now you got that extra job, and now you're paying your tuition, and now you're going to college. You're doing all these incredible things. But as soon as you get a job, your first car, your apartment, now the body's holding on a lot more stress to where that superhero version of you is kind of breaking down, where you'll start to really, what I've seen in history with my clients, 22 is really where it kind of can start, where that digestive system is now causing problems. That fungal infection, that candida overgrowth is not going away. That weight is not coming off like it used to. So what happens there is that the body is under so much stress, the sympathetic nervous system inhibits digestion. Stomach acid starts to go down. Most people think they have too much stomach acid when they have too little stomach acid, when they have symptoms of GERD. Peristalsis, which is blood flow, the blood flow through the intestines, that when you usually have blood flow and oxygen going through the intestines, it's a wave-like movement. Fight or flight is using that blood flow towards the heart and the main muscles to fight something or run away. So you don't have peristalsis. So now you have constipation, digestive issues, lower back pain. It goes on and on and on, but the body perceives it's in survival mode. So at that particular time, you can try to you could try to do anything you can mentally to try to go after or be more positive, but as above, so below. And that's the holistic approach that I teach and that I've come from, that I've been mentored under at the Czech Institute with Paul Czech, is what I've noticed, that my celiac or my issues that I had with my body, my superhero version of me of overcoming everything and being this inspiring guy, started breaking down when I started gaining weight, started having digestive issues, started having all these problems, to the point where it was affecting me being a Division I athlete. I was a Division I football player. So that's what made me a little more inspired to want to become a Czech practitioner. And then what I've learned is I was in survival mode. In survival mode is your cortisol levels are high, your adrenaline levels are high, digestion is not operating well. Your body, you're going to have an anterior pelvic tilt, which I go into in chapter 5. Your pelvis is going to tilt forward. Your back is going to be in lower doses, is what we call it. Basically curves. Your hip flexors are going to be tight. And then the kinetic chain is affected. Your feet, ankles, knee, hip, shoulder, etc. So when you're sitting there and you're being hard on yourself of saying like, yo, I got to make something happen. I got to do this. But your blood sugar is up at one moment and then down. It's almost impossible to think positive or want to make your pursuit of purpose come true. I told you the third hormone that nobody talks about with trauma is insulin. When your body's under fight or flight, your body produces the cortisol. That cortisol tells the body to go on fight or flight. The body needs sugar. And so what it would do is you have a hormone called glucagon that then goes to the liver and says, yo, I need you to release some of that sugar, that stored glycogen that you have, so we can make it available so we can fight or flight, because the muscles use sugar as glycogen for energy. And when that glycogen the glucagon releases glycogen into available blood sugar, glucose, you have high blood sugar levels, but you're just sitting in your car and you're in traffic, but you're having high blood sugar and you're in fight or flight. You're not using that sugar to fight nothing, and you're not using that sugar to run away from nothing. So what happens? Insulin has to come store that sugar. Insulin stores that sugar. Your blood sugar levels go low. What does your body have to do? It has to go through the fight or flight system again to create more sugar. So adrenaline, cortisol have to come back up. Your body produces glucagon, blood sugar comes back up, and then you're craving sweets, something quick to snack on, salty food, and you're tired. So if you eat something that's high carbohydrate at 9 o'clock in the morning, and if you have a sensitive nervous system, which I explained in chapter 1 and 2, which is basically when you're traumatized, your nervous system, your sensory system is hyperactive. You'll notice that if you don't eat enough protein, fats, and make sure you control the amount of carbohydrates you eat, you'll have weight issues, non-alcoholic fatty liver, PCOS, IBS, candida overgrowth, because your blood sugar is going up and down all day. So that meal at 9 o'clock that is perceived to be healthy may not be that healthy for you if you have a sensitive nervous system, which will make your blood sugar crash in 2 hours, which then makes you have to reach for something sweet, a quick pick-me-up, a cup of coffee, something like that, and it goes back up and it comes back down. So you're going through fight or flight all day. Your brain's in survival mode. It's still worried about safety and security. And then your organs and glands are starting to burn out, especially like adrenals, a high risk for adrenal fatigue. So it's almost impossible to think positive like that, because your brain can't go into the neocortex to have imagination. And like, I'm just going to connect one more thing. Also, you're going to be stuck in the root chakra. And if you connect the Eastern medicine and Western medicine to this. So the adrenal glands, when I take the 5 layers of energy, I connect it right to, on this level here, it goes right to the root chakra, which is with the consciousness of being in survival mode, of not being grounded, of adrenal fatigue. So in order to make sure you can get out of something like that, if you notice that you are a positive person one part of the day, but the next part of the day you're struggling, don't be too hard on yourself. Start to see if your blood sugar levels are fluctuating. And one way you can fix that is with something I call the big 3: enough protein, low glycemic carbohydrates, and enough omega-3 fats. Because we have a high tendency in America to have a lot of omega-6s without consciously being aware. And then drinking enough water. I find that people don't drink enough water. Your body weight divided by 2. And then go for a high vibe walk each day. 45, 60-minute walk. Vision the person that you want to become. Inhale through your nose and out your mouth. When you inhale through your nose, you have little hairs in your nose. That tickles the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the antagonist to fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system. And then imagine the person that you want to become. Only do it in a positive environment with positive music. And don't let no negative people, no phone calls, nothing. You'll start off with 1,000 different thoughts. 20 minutes go by, you'll be down to 100. 25, 30 minutes after, you'll notice that you'll have that one or two thoughts that you're really on, but you're dialed in more to your purpose. And then you get an idea. You get an idea of like, oh, this is what I want to do with this is what was missing. I got to go and learn this, or I got to go do this. Because emotions is the 4th layer of energy and motion. When your body thinks it's stress and in survival mode, you're going to bring the energy that comes with that. Your perception of everything is going to be different. What happens when you don't express emotions? You suppress it into the nervous system, organs and glands, muscular system, and then it becomes subconscious. Move the body, express your emotions, and then come back down with that piece of paper and a notebook. Piece of paper and a notebook, and put that idea that you had that came to you on your walk. The more you do that with your nutrition and your movement and the music and protecting your energy, you're going to be a problem.
I love it, man. And when you were talking about the symptoms, you basically described like 99% of people, tired, fatigued, addicted to sugar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
absolutely.
So I'm curious, you have so many wonderful frameworks, right? And did you come up with many of these, or are these adopted from the Czech Institute, or how did you come up with like 1%er and Dream Team and Stopwatch? Did all that stuff come through your journaling? Did it come through meditation? Because I like sharing frameworks, but even more so, I like sharing the mechanism through which frameworks occur, because I think we all have access to that sort of higher vibration information that we can intuit that will help us in our life. Because, everything may not work. Like, I'm a big meditation advocate. Not everybody's necessarily into meditation. I could sit here and talk about meditation till we're all blue in the face and how elegantly describe how it solves every problem in your life. But that may not be something that other people resonate with. So how do you tap into that internal source of wisdom that will allow people to sort of download which frameworks work best for them?
Yeah, I'll begin by saying the Dream Team it was a concept from my mentor, Paul Chek, that has the Czech Institute. So I did not come up with that. The other frameworks, yes, I've come up with. It's because I work with so many clients throughout the last 8 years of my professional career. I started off in the streets of New York City with dumbbells on my book bag, and I'll train you for free because I had to figure this thing out. Nobody wanted to hire me. I'm like, how do you not hire me, bro? I got a college degree. I got the highest certification in training. Nobody wanted to hire me. So I had to figure this thing out. And then I noticed, like, just like how you said that not everybody resonates with like meditation, for an example, and you understood that. I understood that not everybody really wanted like the same old concepts, bro, or like the same old language of even with nutrition. I felt like a lot of people couldn't connect to something. And what I've seen is you can either have like that one dude that went to college that has all these certifications and licenses, but it's like super professional, or you can have that one trainer in the hood that, lied about his certification, but he's training you in the back of Planet Fitness somewhere. I wanted to be that dude that made it cool to be from the streets and go through trauma, but also have your education and take the scientific terminology, all the practices that I've learned from Napoleon Hill to Bob Proctor to Paul Check, Jay-Z. Music is huge for me. Kendrick Lamar. I wanted to take it and make it a language and concepts to people that feel like they're tired of hearing the same concepts as before because nobody, kind of came up with it. So I had to use it for me first. Like the 1%er. The 1%er is the person that came here to overcome generational trauma and poverty. The 1%er is the one that has a similar story as mine. It may not be 100% the same, but the 1% is the one that is the first one in their family to do something that has never been done before. The 1% is usually someone who doesn't recognize how great they're doing in life because we're so hard on ourselves. The first thing we're thinking about is what we're not doing well, because we're used to pushing ourselves a lot more because if we don't, we have no other way. But we're thinking about the generation after us and we're thinking about the generation who came before us because we're responsible for both. So we're in the middle. But I call it a 1% because one day I was sitting down and I said, what are the chances of me getting Division I scholarship? 1%. What's the chance of me getting a book deal? 1%. What's the chances of me not being in prison right now? 1%. I said, hold on. I'm doing the impossible too much. I must be one lucky person. So what I started doing with clients is I'll work with a client who can resonate with me and I'll say, hey, can I ask you a question? What did you do here? Or did you do this? And then I started doing the statistics and I saw it was like 1.5 to 2% or 1.2%. And I'm like, you're a 1%er. Cause I was trying to figure out why people were resonating with me. And a 1%er needs to be reminded that they make the impossible possible. And a lot of times they're doing things that we don't feel like people are grateful for us at times, or people can easily take advantage of us because we have big hearts and we want to help everybody. And it's a little different than a people pleaser, but the people pleaser archetype, you got to be careful of the victim and people pleaser archetype. I talk about that in the book. But the 1%er is someone who's like, it feels like a responsibility for us, for the next generation, the generation before us. And it usually is because your DNA changes forever. So for example, my father, when he was raised, my father's father was an entrepreneur, but he had 35 kids. So he was doing things with ladies. Like he was like, I'm not sure if this is okay. I'll give you the description. He was a guy that had a hat with a feather in his head and he had Stacey Adams shoes and he was a player. My father, when he had no connection with his father, my grandfather brought him an ice cream shop at 8 years old in Newark, New Jersey, and wanted my dad just to be a businessman at 8. My dad just wanted to spend time with his family, but my grandfather had an addiction. My dad picked up an addiction as he got older, but there's a good thing. My dad raised me because he wanted to be the father that he never had, which is amazing. But we were in poverty. We grew up in a hotel, in the projects. It was rough. But my child, when they come in, they're not going to have anything that like I had or my father or my grandfather because I improved the DNA. A 1%er, that's what they do. My little brother, Brandon, Port Authority cop, went to college, graduated. My youngest brother, he moved in with us. I got custody of him when I was 16 years old. The one that moved in with my aunt when he was born because he was born in prison. I got custody of him. I raised him. So I raised 2 young boys. And then I raised my sister, my black sister, my father's daughter, her 2 children, because one of their fathers died, got shot and killed, and the other one went to prison for, eliminating somebody. So I have 2 young boys again after I raised 2 young boys. And I noticed, okay, that's the job that I have. So that's where the 1%er comes in. The trifecta effect is the 3 hormones, insulin, cortisol, and adrenaline, how they all work together. What other concept? The stopwatch method. I had to do it. I did not want to. I remember the event I had to go to with a family. I'm like, I do not want to be here. But I noticed as soon as I said, I'm going to leave at this particular time, I was no longer stressing the night before and couldn't sleep or nothing like that. So the concepts basically comes from trying to put some lingo, some swag into it, but also make it very digestible and make it something that sticks. And I usually practice it with my own coaching myself first.
If you're tired of trying to change, but you fall off the wagon and start over and repeat that process every few months, my latest book, The Year You Transform, can be your guide to adopting the most sustainable path to transformation. With 10 powerful 7-day challenges and a proven roadmap, this book will give you all the tools you need to transform one small win at a time. Get your copy at theyearyoutransform.com.
First,
Have you heard the saying that strong men create good times create weak men create hard times?
yeah.
And the cycle repeats. Do you think, having gone through all the adversity you've gone through, that would in anybody's standard of what hard times are, yours would qualify? Do you think some of that is necessary for stoking the internal fire to show up for the root cause of the things that are blocking you? Because, you mentioned me trying to get people to meditate, you trying to get people to eat in a certain way and address the stress. That those are root cause issues, which means if you can navigate that, the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, it's
What
over.
most people do is they just look for the Band-Aid, the quick fix, the shortcut solution to their issue. They want to take pills for the symptoms as opposed to addressing the root causes, because the root causes are just too difficult to look at. There's death by 1,000 cuts and there's health by 1,000 choices. You have to get up 1,000 days, like you said, 3 years, and make it to that gym by 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, not a lot of people are willing to do that, but a lot of people who've gone through hard times are willing to do that. So is some of that necessary,
Absolutely.
do you think?
I have a belief, especially like with a 1%er, right? Overcoming generational trauma and poverty. For some reason, when I was going through all the trauma when I was a kid, it was really getting to me. It was my father. I started selling drugs for my father at a young age. And it wasn't like I was on the street all day with him, even though I was, but I wasn't hustling for him. He was hustling by himself. But as we got older, my dad's hips, he had arthritis and it got really bad where he needed to get surgery and get a hip replacement, but he couldn't do it because it would take him out of commission of hustling and we couldn't pay for the hotel. So my father had me run the pills for him. And I remember, man, like I was like, yo, why am I going through this in life? Like, this is crazy. I'm not built for the street. All my friends are on the street. All my family built for the street. But like I would do something that was like street. And I'm like, my body, my nervous system was overwhelmed. And I felt in my heart that I was here for something different. I wanted to get those dudes I wanted to get people that went through what I went through to think differently. So I remember I asked myself, like, yo, why am I here? Where did that come from? Why am I here? And where am I going after this? And that was like a mantra I used to say to myself. And I used to have to walk from the hotel to school. So it was $1.50 for that 87. It was a bus called the 87. I'll take you up to the Heights. I'm like, yo, I'm walking because $1.50 there, $1.50 back. That's $3. Back in the day, I get 2 slices of pizza and a can of soda with my brother where we can eat something with that $3. And I would just ask myself that all the time. Why am I here? Where did I come from? And what came to me, and I did not know what the word spirituality was until 2 years ago. And when I went on other people's podcasts and they're like, oh, you're very spiritual. I'm like, spiritual? I'm like, what is that? What's spirituality? But I truly believe that why are we only here for about 100 years if we're lucky, right? But there's certain trees that are here for 400 or 500 years. And there's a turtle that lives longer than us here. I'm like, what is that? And then when I started to really think about it, I said, yo, we came here. We're being tested. I feel like we're being tested, and we come back here to finish a job. This is what I've come to like feel, right? I felt like I was here before and I just failed. Either someone took me out or I'm trying to figure it out, but I just failed. And now that I'm back, while I'm here, I went through a lot of trauma, but I could have, no offense, I could have been in the middle of Iowa or something like that. Bro, I'm right on the Hudson River across New York City. I'm looking at New York City every morning. So I started to see that, yo, this isn't a coincidence. This is not a coincidence. And as soon as I started putting my mind to something a little more positive, even going through the trauma, I used to say to myself, yo, God, you got the wrong one. Like you got the wrong one. This is going to be another chapter in the book, or this is going to be this. Even though it probably was delusional, it worked because everything I wanted in my life, I didn't know how it was going to come. It came out of nowhere. It paid off. And then I started to notice it only happened when I was working on the parts of myself that I was avoiding. For example, I told you I never thought I would write a book. I have learning disabilities, but I couldn't read or write until I was 22 years old. I used to dodge the English teacher in the hallway. I used to trade with people. I'm like, yo, you write this paper for me. I'll present your project. I avoided it. And I noticed that I came to a big part of my life when I became the head coach and CEO of a gym at 24 in Westchester, New York. They were like, you got to send out an email. I'm like, an email? It took me like 4 days to write one paragraph. I checked it. I sent it out. Bro, I went to work the next day. Everybody, it's a high-end neighborhood. Everybody told me about my grammar issues. And I noticed that this writing thing was going to be holding me back from being able to accomplish the thing I want to accomplish. And I was trying to finesse it with presenting or speaking, but I noticed that I would never become the person I want to become unless I finished the job. So a mantra, I say, yo, Nate, finish the job, bro. You don't feel like doing this? Finish the job. So yes, I believe that we go through, I think certain souls have been here. I feel like I've been here before. It's weird to say that, but I feel like I've been here before. And when I started to connect to a purpose, not for money or not for fame or likes on social, from when I'm done, I'm going to sit down and watch how many people I helped, but also did I do the job that I came here to do? And that's what the 1%, the 1% that came here to change the generational trauma and poverty, not only in their family, but also inspire those in their community. So yes, hard times, the polarity effect. You don't know what hot is until you know what cold is. You don't know what up is until you know what down is. So the more that you went through a hard time and the more that you have a positive aspect of it and you use it as alchemy to push yourself and you have empathy with yourself, you appreciate the good times way more. So I'll finish with this. I don't want to drag this answer too much. Yo, bro, I go to restaurants and these fancy restaurants, they be like, do you want, I don't know, a sirloin steak, medium rare? I'm like, brother, just give me a piece of meat. I noticed in my life that it's the simple things that make me happy. Yo, I don't have to sleep in a hotel tonight. Oh, I don't have to worry about my mom kicking my door up open and beating me with a bat. She used to beat me with this black Yankee bat that used to have a gold print. I remember we got it from the Boys and Girls Club. She used to use that bat on us all the time. I don't have to worry about that. I'm breathing. I can taste food. I can see things. I can hear things. You know how many people out there that were born deaf or blind? So I think when you come from nothing, you'll notice that two things. Number one, you'll notice what good feels like because you know what bad feels like. But the second thing is, humbly, I'm going to say this in a nice way, the competition. I know people that get, stressed out about, the smallest things. And I'm like, yo, bro, I went days without eating. Like I can, if the bus is a 15-minute delayed, like there's worse that could happen. So your perspective is a little different than, being kind of like, I'm not going to use the word too ungrateful, right? Or negative, right? A negative energy comes from negative emotions and negative emotions comes from a negative subconscious mind. So we got to put some work in. Are you triggering your sensitive nervous system with nutrition that's putting you back in that consciousness? Or are you listening to negative music, watching negative things on YouTube or, wherever? Are you around negative people or negative environment? You got to raise your vibration up a little bit. So yeah, if you come from nothing, it's a little different when you actually come up, but that doesn't mean those that went through a better childhood than me doesn't know what it's like to have pain and then overcome it either. We have pain in different areas in our life, but yeah, it definitely creates stronger without a doubt. Bro, what would life be if we just woke up and everything was done for us? Like I appreciate this interview with you. That's why I want to thank you. When I got on this call and you said, yeah, I've been there before. And when I said, thank you for giving me a blurb, we pitched you for a blurb and you got right back to me. I appreciate that. Why? Because I know that your credibility and all the things you've done in your life, I respect it to the point where I'm grateful for that blurb. But I also know what it's like to get dubbed, right? 1,000 other people said no to me, So the appreciation is, if everybody gave me everything or you were born with everything and you get everything you want in life, you don't know what bad is, meaning you forget what good is because it's a polarity. Consciousness comes from a polarity, right? You got the sun, you got the moon, you got cortisol, you got melatonin, you got hot and you got cold. It's like a slingshot. The harder your life is, boop, 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 boop. As soon as you take off, you're out of there. You go further. So you have the potential to go further when you have a hard life. Absolutely.
Hey, really quickly, if you like this content or if you don't like it, let me know down in the comments because your likes and comments are going to help me learn what you want more of. And then that way I can keep bringing you the good stuff. All right. Thanks so much for your feedback and back to the show. Yeah. What's interesting is I didn't remember that I gave you the blurb until I read your book and I saw it. right? But I do remember sending it out, and I was reminded of sending it out, and what you just said made me reflect back on this idea of presence, which is, I think, what you're alluding to, being in the moment and doing the best you can in the moment and being generous in the moment. And you don't have to remember it. You don't have to remember what you said. You don't have to really remember what you did, provided that you're being present. Other people remember it. It affects other people. It leaves a positive ripple throughout. When you look back at your life, even though you have the machete and you're blazing your path through the wilderness and it looks confusing and you don't know if you're going the right way or not, but when you look back and you see, oh, I was present and I was appreciative and I was grateful. And something else that came to me when I was reading your book was empathetic. Like, you're probably the most empathetic person ever. Like, you probably don't have any judgment around anybody, because you've even said in the acknowledgments at the end, like, your mom, as challenging as she was, it inspired you to want to understand her. And you guys are still going through that process, right? So we tend to give up on people so easily for the tiniest little things. Oh, 3 strikes and blah, blah, blah. Non-negotiables and to protect my. And it's like, that's not real life. If we want to look at things from a sort of broader perspective, maybe, just maybe, we designed our life this way from a spiritual perspective to make us more empathetic, to make us more patient, to make us more apt to give, even though the person we may be giving to has been selfish towards us, or we feel like they've let us down over and over and over, right? And maybe we don't have to remember all the ways we're giving and being patient, but they remember it. And maybe that ends up shaping their path 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and they end up helping other people because of the thing that you did.
Indra's web is what I've learned. My mentor painted me a mandala of my life, and he put eyes that's connected to a web. And he wanted to remind me that each person that I'm helping, even if it's one person, it's not only that one person, it's their ancestors, but it's also their children, the people that they meet at the store. Everybody's interconnected. What you notice is, look at a picture from you like 10 years ago, and you look at it yourself and you're like, yo, what was I thinking about dating that one person or wearing that one shirt or going to that one spot? And then you notice that, oh, I just had to learn, I had to grow. A lot of our family and friends need that same process. And there's a lot of leaders, or there's a lot of, quote unquote, the archetype of the wise man, wise woman, right? So we go through stages of archetypes. We got the child archetype, which can fall victim to a lot of things. Then we have the warrior archetype, which is someone who goes out there, hustles, makes things happen, but they start burning themselves out because they're avoiding making a move to become their own owner of maybe their household or their car or their business. But then we have the archetype of the king and queen. And that archetype right there happens to be like, you own things. That's what's up. But the negative aspect of it is when you become a king or queen archetype, you get your hands too much in everything, and you're doing too much. And what got you to be the king or queen to begin with, you're no longer working on that craft. Mm-hmm. And then you start losing control of the things around you. And that's what happened to me when I was in LA, and I started to see it, and I had to be honest with myself. And that's why I had to humble myself and come back home. The wise man, wise woman understands that the progression of the consciousness and the archetypes that people take on in life, and has empathy and compassion. And usually our grandparents are the wise men, wise women. My grandmother was a little more patient with me than my dad was, right? But today we can find a lot of grandmas and grandpas are probably on the gram trying to, go crazy. We don't have a lot of wise men and wise women today. And I think a lot of young souls we're becoming more of the wise men, wise women, where my mother, yes, she traumatized me. She did all these things. But in chapter 10, I talk about my mother never had a father. My mother wasn't 6'3". She couldn't play sports. She didn't have a phone to Google things to try to figure out what was wrong with her, or put on her headphones and listen to like music to inspire her. It wasn't cool back in the day when my mom was coming from the projects, white girl coming out of the projects with mental health. She's schizophrenic and bipolar. Back in the day, wasn't diagnosed as well. So my mother was using recreational drugs to balance out her brain imbalance that she had with her neurotransmitters, right? And she got hooked on drugs early on. My mother didn't go into therapy when my mother was a kid. They put you, what we call it, is the nut house,
Mm-hmm.
right? They strap you up and they put you away. So my mother's childhood was very different than my childhood. My mother's mother was an alcoholic. My grandmother was an alcoholic and used to beat her. My mother was sexually abused as a child from the men that my grandmother brought home.
Mm.
So think about that. And now I'm wise enough to know as I get older that, oh, I'm not going to, forgive my mother because she did this and this and this, where I believe that I'm here to teach my mother how to live her next life. And I felt like I was her father and spiritually, like I don't sit there and be like, mother, I'm your father in the spiritual world. I just felt that in my heart. So it was easy for me to give her a hug. As a man today, I take care of her, make sure she's financially okay. But there's certain people, to keep it real with you, like there's certain people that I love from a distance. But every time we know better. When we let them in, they do the same thing over and over again I'm worried about my family now. Like I'm trying to create my own family now. But yeah, having empathy and compassion, it can be as simple as this. I was driving this morning. This dude cuts me off. Like, I don't know what was wrong. He came out of a driveway and he literally just came in front of me when I was driving like at 25 miles per hour. We almost crashed because he wanted to be crazy. And I said to myself, yo, this mother, and I just sat there and I said, he must be having a bad morning. So I'm going to show him how to deal with that. Because you know how that happens and you're both stuck at that red light and you look over and you're looking at each other. He looked over and he thought I was going to be yelling or whatever. And he rolls the windows. I'm so sorry. I said, it's all right, bro. Have a great morning. Right. I don't know what he's going through, but it's practicing there first. But you have to practice it with yourself. And that's what I noticed I had to do work on. I'm very hard on myself. Because it was either I made something happen in my life or everything is gone, right? Like my brother went to prison. My older brother went to prison after my sister went to prison. My mother was on the streets. As I was getting older, my mother was going viral on social media and nobody knew that was my mother. They had this woman on drugs on the street. People were picking on her in the middle of the ghetto and making fun of her because she was begging for money. And they didn't know that was my mother because I publicly didn't, really show my mom so much. I was trying to hide out. So people didn't know that was my mom.
Wow.
So there was things that I kind of went through. My mom was put in a psych ward when I was in college. My father and my brother, I'm worried about where they were going to sleep. When I went to school, I felt guilty of having a full scholarship and having heat and hot water and a meal card where I can eat 3 times a day. Whatever I wanted was a buffet. I was like, what? I can go in here anytime. And knowing that my brother's calling me, telling me, he's still waiting for dad to make money on the street. So I started cutting hair in college outside of being a Division I athlete to make sure that I can try to contribute in any way I can. So but if I missed out on something, if I didn't perform well in something, I was so hard on myself because it was a lot of pressure too. So I had to learn on how to be present. And that wasn't something I was able to do. That was because even when you take care of your body and you're not in survival mode and your biology is not in survival mode anymore, I was subconsciously used to, I know nobody's going to do something for me. That's my belief. Nobody's going to come through for me. Nobody's going to do this. I know it's up to me. But what I started to notice is you start rushing things a little more and you succeed at certain things. But, I started to see that, for example, I have hip hop artist Corday as a client, right? I worked with him for 2.5 years, worked with Naomi Osaka, recently hired from Lin-Manuel Miranda. I'm his full coach. I wasn't really, when I got Lin-Manuel Miranda recently, I had to practice like it. 2 years went by with Corday, right? Like, and I was working with other people in LA too, but that was a big milestone for me personally. When I got Lin-Manuel Miranda, I had to tell myself, yo, you're going to be present with this one. Like, because what I'll do, like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm like, I'm about to get him right. I'm about to fix him. I'm about to fix any imbalances he has, get him right with the nutrition, because I know after I make this one happen, then I'm going to be able to do this. After my first book, I know my second deal is going to look like this. And then I started cheating the process, meaning I wasn't working on the craft, bro. I have to be real with you because you're not in that survival mode. You're thinking about the next step, but you're not thinking about the fundamentals. So I had to humble myself. And that's why it took me longer to write the book. That's why, I had to be present. I didn't know what that was like because I was scared. I was scared of being present because I thought if I don't control it, it won't happen. And that is a belief that goes against a teaching that I have of you have faith and fear in life. Faith is believing something good's going to happen with no proof. Fear is believing something bad's going to happen with no proof. I was believing something subconsciously was going to bad would happen with no proof. So I was trying to prepare for it because that's survival mode. And I had to let that go. And that was very hard. So yeah, it's all a process.
How do people, the clients that you've secured, how have they found out about you for the most part? Is it word of mouth or?
During 2020, my fiance, I was managing her for 5 years in acting, right? I've been with her for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. But at the time we was together for 5 years and I had to learn all these things about acting, like contracts and stuff like that and auditions. And she finally booked a TV show. She booked little gigs, but she booked her big gig was Saved by the Bell. Mm-hmm. So we went to LA. We lived in Studio City. And when we were out there, she was living by herself there. I said, I want you to experience this. You never went to college. I'll keep the apartment in New York and I'll just come back and forth. And then my gym got shut down due to the pandemic. And then when I came back to LA, bro, I thought all my clients were going to come online with me. Nobody came online with me. So I started my career of like going around New York City, going on YouTube, like, yo, I'm over here. If you guys want training, I'll do it for free. And I was so confident that like, if I do it for free, I'll get the result where you're going to be my walking advertisement. Right. So when I was in LA, I noticed that nobody wanted to come over to Zoom, only like 4 of like 100 of my clients. So I was like, yo, I have to figure this thing out. And I had a dream of making videos and making podcasts and doing all that. And I was so hard on myself. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it, or you need to be perfect. Nobody's going to like your slang. And then, believe it or not, it was a day that Saved by the Bell had a scene. My fiance had a scene with Kobe Bryant on Monday. So her and I were making this plan on Sunday to like, yo, here's when you go into the corner and you guys are off, like put me on FaceTime with Kobe. Like that, Kobe's my favorite. Kobe is like my inspiration in life. And it was when Kobe Bryant passed, I had a plane ride. We was coming back from Sundance because she was in Sundance. And I cried on that airplane. And I thought, yo, if this airplane were to go down right now, I have nothing. I'm scared to reach out to people. I'm scared to really, be the person I know I'm capable of being. And when we landed, I made the Be Great With Nate podcast. I went on there on Spotify, started making my podcast. And then I come out one day and I pull my fiance aside. I'm like, you see these young dudes in here in the hallway? They're my age. They had chains and stuff like that. I'm like, they're drug dealers. All right. So watch out for them. I know hustlers when I see them. So I was preparing for all this and I was wrong, bro. These were rappers walking down my hallway, and people in the music industry. Mm-hmm. So one day this guy, I wanted to say something to him, but he would always say something to me, but I wanted to pitch him because I'm like, yo, you may know somebody who needs a coach or whatever. And then one day he pulled me to the side. He's like, yo, I saw your Instagram the other day. I was like, oh yeah, bro. Like I had 700 followers on Instagram. I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, yeah. He's like, yo, I'm the manager for Corday and he needs to get right in the gym. He has a GQ magazine shoot coming up. We would love for you to help him. Can you send a PDF? I said, yo, a PDF ain't going to work. Like, he's a rapper. He's in a studio with chicken wings and stuff. Like I got to be in person with him. And here's what happens in Hollywood, right? Like, so like there's so many Hollywood coaches and stuff like that. I knew that I was willing to do the hard things, right? Because you went through hard things in life. For like 4 months, me and this guy going back and forth, didn't hear anything back. One day he calls me, he goes, okay, Corday's ready. I said, all right. He gave me Corday's number. And then I texted him and said, Corday, let me know when you're ready. The manager called me and said, that's not going to work. You gotta like call him. So I sent Corday this video of saying, yo, listen, bro, I was scared. I was so professional. Like, excuse me, Corday, let me know when you're available. After he called me, his manager called me. I'm like, I bet. I sent him a video. I was walking my 2 doodles in a park with the sun out. And I said, yo, Corday, if you really want results and you really want to lose the weight before this GQ magazine shoot, he had it with Naomi Osaka, who was a tennis player. And I said, you got to hit me back. We got to make this happen now. In fact, I'm so confident that I'll help you lose the weight. I'll fix your ankle problems. We'll clear up your skin. I'll do it for free. And if I do my job, you pay me. If I don't do my job, you don't pay me, you could delete my number. He FaceTimed me back in like 3 minutes. It was like, can you pull up to my house? I'm like, oh, I had to play it off. Like, I didn't know that was going to really work. So I pulled up to his house and there was a bunch of rappers there. And I got Corday as my first client and I went above and beyond. And yeah, we got him results first and then started buzzing around Hollywood. So I started getting another actor. But I was more thinking about the investing into my skill set and my credibility. So instead of charging like full price for a lot of them, I would literally give them a deal that was irresistible because I just wanted to know what it was like to deal with 15 people that I have to get through to work with this one client who nobody can help. Mm-hmm. Because they're too busy or they're on the road. I wanted that challenge. And then after I got those and I started getting results, when I got back, Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton and In the Heights, Moana, who's a legend, reached out to my fiance because my fiance, her biggest idol was Lin-Manuel Miranda. They're from the same neighborhood. He reached out 2 years after we had lunch one day because he's a fan of Saved by the Bell. And he was like, I wanted to know if your fiance was open to training me and my wife. I was like, what? Am I open? So he's like, yeah, but you have to commute here. Bro, like I got his apartment right now. I got my gym in there. Like I got a tire gym, right? Like I have a kitchen to my, like, so we set up one of his apartments that he's going to be reconstructing. But I'm like, yo, can I bring a dumbbell here? He's like, yeah. I came back the next day. I got a bench, dumbbells, kettlebells, protein shake, berries, digestive enzymes in there, everything. So I got one person and I will go above and beyond. I would do more than I'm paid for, and I'll get the job done and become a person that's not hard to deal with, that brings positive energy. And then they see that and then they talk about me to somebody else and it's word of mouth.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, listen, the book is The You Never Know. The promise you make is you can eliminate most of your mental, physical, and emotional frustrations by reading this book and applying its core principles, which I thought was a very bold guarantee when I first cracked the book open. But then you actually break down everything from your posture, your diet, your workout regimen, your, different mental health exercises, the importance of journaling. So it's a very holistic approach to health and wellness. And the cover even says holistic approach to addressing anxiety, chronic pain, fatigue, and more. So it's all root cause stuff. Yeah.
Real quick. It sounds like a strong statement, but I have about 207 documents of Google Docs of working with clients. And I saw the process that they all went through to get their results. And that's how I came up with the chapters in that particular order. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm very confident. You follow in that book, you follow what you're supposed to follow, you'll get results.
And I would say that they will also be really inspired by your story, and they will be able to neutralize any complaints they have in life by seeing what you've gone through. It's like, wow, I don't have anything to complain about. Yeah.
Well, or resonate with, right? Like,
or resonate with, yeah.
Because, I'm not trying to take shots, but it's just not another science person telling you what's going on. It's like, here's some science, right? But here's a story. I've been through this, so I try to make it something that people can relate to as well.
I love it. It's fantastic, man. Well, thanks again for coming on. Everybody, this book is available everywhere books are sold. And so make sure you get a copy of that. Make sure you follow Nate on the socials for more inspiration. And you tell us about your podcast.
It was Be Great with Nate. Now we're changing it to the Nate Ortiz podcast. Mm-hmm. It's this type of energy that I'm coming on the mic with. So if you like this type of energy, be ready for that. On YouTube as well, you could just put the Nate Ortiz. Mm-hmm. And I have a bunch of videos, presentations.
Is it interview or is it informational or what is it? Inspirational?
So it's holistic. So like I have a podcast there that can teach you everything about digestion. For an example, here's how you know you have low stomach acid. Here's how you know you have a SIBO. Here's why you have constipation, etc. And then, but it comes off like this. And then there may be one like the 6 fears that you have to deal with in life. So it's a whole educational how to self-help holistic approach.
Awesome, man. Well, keep shining.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, bro.
Absolutely, man. Keep shining. Keep doing your thing. Wishing you all the success in the world. And thanks again for coming out. And hopefully we get a chance to connect in person at some point.
Oh yeah, it's going to happen.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you resonated with this conversation and you want more, start by checking out this one. And otherwise, we've got an entire playlist of similar conversations. So make sure you're subscribed and please leave a comment letting me know which other guests you'd like for me to interview on this channel.